I want you to picture a very specific friend in your life right now. You know exactly who I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. We all have one.
Right. It's this friend who absolutely refuses to let the group chat die.
Right.
Like, they step into a painfully awkward silence and instantly, diffuse it with a joke that just has everybody in the room laughing.
The designated icebreaker.
Exactly. They're
Yeah.
so quick, like so sharp. They're cracking the joke before you've even finished your sentence. And you rely on them to bring the energy, right? To be the life of the party, to carry that conversational weight. But here is the question I want you to ask yourself today.
And it's a tough one.
It really is. When was the last time you or like anyone else actually checked on them?
Yeah. It's this massive blind spot we all share, honestly.
Totally.
We quietly assume that the funniest person in the room is just inherently the happiest. But, when you start pulling back the layers on this kind of chronic performative humor, you realize it's often a highly sophisticated coping strategy. Yeah, it's an incredibly effective defense mechanism. It's basically designed to manage profound internal pain without, ever having to explicitly ask for help.
So what if the loudest laugh is actually a perfectly constructed mask hiding the deepest silence? I mean, that paradigm shift is exactly what we're exploring in today's deep dive.
And it's a shift that really changes how you see your own relationships.
100%. We're going to tear down this whole idea of the funny friend and look at the actual neurological mechanics of why we use humor to hide emotional pain. We'll look at the psychology, some ancient philosophy, and this is the fun part, some surprisingly deep anime characters.
Which is such a great lens for this, by the way.
Right. But I want to get straight into the psychology of this first, because society doesn't just encourage this behavior, it literally demands it.
It absolutely does.
Like, being the funny one isn't just a personality trait, it's a job. And it's a job you never actually applied for. You just got assigned this role so early in life that you forgot you were even auditioning for something else.
That framing is crucial, I think, because a job implies a required performance.
Yeah.
And a system of rewards.
Yeah, you get paid in laughs.
Exactly. We operate within this societal framework that disproportionately rewards the performance of happiness. Think about the modern corporate environment, or even just basic social etiquette.
Oh, don't even get me started on corporate etiquette.
Right. There's this tremendous invisible pressure to avoid being the friction in the room. You are expected to manage your own distress silently so you don't disrupt the equilibrium of the group.
So basically, pain is only acceptable to the group if it's delivered as a punchline.
That's exactly it.
Like, if you can package your trauma into a tight, self-deprecating stand-up routine, people will lean in, they'll listen, they'll applaud you for being so raw,
Yes, because it's digestible.
Right. But if you just state the trauma plainly, if you sit there at brunch and say, I am drowning right now, people physically recoil.
They look at their phones. They try to awkwardly pivot.
They totally do. So you internalize this unspoken rule very quickly, which is basically, my pain is a burden to others unless it entertains them.
And that internalization leads directly to the phenomena of smiling depression.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because that term is heavy.
It is. And we aren't talking about feeling momentarily down. We're talking about individuals experiencing severe psychological distress, often clinical depression, who present as highly functional and entirely upbeat.
Like the people who just seem to have it all together.
Exactly. They show up to work early, they crush their presentations, they organize the happy hours, and they literally never miss a beat. They've constructed this massive firewall between their internal reality and their external presentation.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of that firewall. Because from a neurological perspective, this idea of emotional regulation in the source has completely fascinated me.
Fascinating how the brain protects itself, yeah.
Yeah. So when something deeply traumatic or painful happens, the amygdala fires off a threat response, right? Flooding the system with cortisol. And the brain is frantically looking for a way to regulate that negative emotion and get back to baseline.
And humor is arguably one of the fastest routes to cognitive reappraisal.
Cognitive reappraisal.
Yeah, so when you make a joke about a painful situation, you are forcing your brain to temporarily shift its perspective. You aren't erasing the pain, but you are creating vital cognitive distance.
I see.
You take something abstract and unbearable, and you shrink it down into a controllable narrative. So for the few seconds it takes to deliver the punchline and hear the laughter, the pain actually feels survivable.
Okay, it makes me think of like audio canceling headphones.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right, like the chaotic noise of the trauma is still happening right outside your ears, but the brain generates a reverse frequency, the joke, so you don't have to hear it. It cancels out the distress for a moment. But there's a biological hook to this too, isn't there?
Yes, the dopamine loop.
Because when you successfully execute that joke, you aren't just getting cognitive distance. You're getting a literal chemical reward.
Exactly. You're tapping into the brain's social validation circuitry. When you make the room laugh, your brain receives a localized hit of dopamine and oxytocin.
The feel-good stuff.
Right. And from an evolutionary standpoint, social acceptance equals safety. Being cast out of the tribe equals death.
Wow. Okay, that escalates quickly.
It does. So when your vulnerability is met with awkwardness, your brain reads that as a social threat. But when your joke is met with laughter, your brain reads that as survival.
It's like a twisted survival game where your health bar is quietly depleting, but the only way to earn points to earn love and validation is to successfully hide that health bar from the other players.
That's exactly how the nervous system gets wired. It learns, okay, genuine vulnerability gets me rejected. Performing keeps me safe.
And you repeat that pattern until the comedy stops being a conscious choice and just solidifies into an automatic reflex.
Which introduces the most insidious aspect of this coping mechanism, really. The deception doesn't remain external.
What do you mean?
Well, eventually, you stop just lying to your friends and you start lying to yourself.
Oh, wow.
Through the sheer repetition of the performance, the brain habituates. You tell the joke so often that you start to believe the punchline is the entirety of the reality. The mask literally becomes fused to the face.
I want to challenge that just a bit, though.
Sure.
If the audio-canceling headphones are working and the dopamine hits are keeping the person afloat and functional, isn't that a net positive? Like, aren't these escape hatches providing a genuine service to their mental health in a world that's inherently difficult?
It's a fair question, but we have to differentiate between genuine emotional processing and deceptive avoidance.
All right.
Genuine relief requires you to actually move through the physiological cycle of the emotion. Deceptive avoidance, which is what chronic performative humor is, simply pauses the cycle.
So it's just kicking the can down the road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It feels like relief because the immediate tension in the room is broken, but the underlying emotional load hasn't gone anywhere.
Got it.
It's essentially structural rot in a house. You can put up beautiful wallpaper, host incredible parties, and everyone will tell you how gorgeous your home is. But the foundation is still failing.
And because you're so good at acting like the house is structurally sound, no one ever brings over a toolbox.
Precisely.
You've engineered your own isolation.
You become trapped by your own competence.
Man, that transition from external performance to internal isolation is incredibly complex, which is why I want to pivot to how this looks when it's dramatized. Because psychology gives us the vocabulary, but storytelling gives us the visual.
And it does so brilliantly.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. Surprisingly, one of the most emotionally honest mediums exploring this exact psychological pattern right now is anime.
It really is.
It utilizes this sad clown archetype with devastating precision.
It's a perfect medium for this analysis, honestly, because anime relies so heavily on internal monologues contrasting with external actions.
Yeah, you literally hear their thoughts.
Right. You are constantly shown the disparity between what a character projects into the world and what they suffer in silence.
Let's start with Gojo Satoru from Jujutsu Kaisen. I mean, if you look at his surface presentation, Gojo is the loudest, most arrogant, frankly obnoxious guy in the room.
He is a lot to handle.
He treats reality like a giant inside joke. He'll be in the middle of a catastrophic life or death battle, and he's like teasing his students and mocking ancient curses mid-fight.
But when you analyze the mechanics of his existence within that universe, the humor takes on a completely different function.
Let's get into that.
Gojo possesses the 6 eyes and the limitless technique. Basically, he is functionally omnipotent within his world. And with absolute power comes absolute alienation.
Because no one can relate to him.
Exactly. No one can stand on his level. No one can even comprehend the sheer sensory overload he experiences constantly.
He's carrying the unbearable weight of being the structural pillar for the entire Jujutsu society. He literally has to watch the people he loves suffer and die because he is the lone exception to the rule of mortality.
And everyone assumes he's untouchable because he never looks like he's suffering.
Yeah, he's always smiling.
His humor isn't a symptom of emptiness or carelessness. It's a highly calculated armor.
How so?
It serves a dual purpose. First, it manages the expectations of everyone around him. By appearing constantly aloof and amused, he reassures society that the strongest is unfazed, which keeps mass panic at bay.
Right. If Gojo panics, the world ends.
Exactly. And second, it keeps people at a safe emotional distance. If he's always joking, no one ever gets close enough to see the crushing isolation he operates within. He laughs so he doesn't collapse under the density of his own power.
That is so intense. Now contrast that with Usopp from One Piece, who is on the complete opposite end of the power spectrum.
Complete opposite.
Usopp is the designated comic relief of the crew. He's always spinning these ridiculous tall tales, acting like a total coward, constantly cracking jokes at his own expense. I mean, he's a regular guy sailing with literal monsters who can shatter islands.
And Usopp's masking technique hides a completely different trauma.
Yeah.
Where Gojo masks the burden of omnipotence, Usopp uses comedy to mask a deep-seated, agonizing fear of not being enough.
The imposter syndrome is so real with him.
It's massive. His humor is a cover for profound insecurity. He exaggerates his accomplishments and plays the fool to justify his presence among gods.
It's fascinating because it proves how versatile this defense mechanism actually is.
Yeah.
You can be at the absolute top of the mountain like Gojo, joking to seem human, or at the absolute bottom of the valley like Usopp, joking to justify your right to exist.
It works in both scenarios.
The funny mask fits perfectly in both environments.
And then, you have characters like Zenitsu from Demon Slayer who takes this to an almost hysterical extreme.
Oh my gosh, Zenitsu.
Zenitsu's public act is incredibly loud. I mean, he is constantly screaming, crying, begging women to marry him, and panicking about dying. It's presented to the audience as this high-octane comedy.
But the underlying psychology of Zenitsu is actually heartbreaking when you stop and think about it.
It really is.
Because his behavior isn't just for laughs in the universe, it's a neurological pressure valve. He is a person who operates in a constant state of sheer, unadulterated terror, yet he still physically shows up to fight demons.
That's the key part. He still shows up.
Right. He externalizes his panic so loudly that it becomes a parody of itself. Like if he didn't scream, the internal pressure of that terror would paralyze him completely. His comedy act is his only way to process fear while remaining functional.
Which brings us to a much darker psychological reality, something touched upon in works like Naoki Urasawa's Monster.
That show is heavy.
Very heavy. It deals heavily with characters navigating severe childhood conditioning. There are instances where trauma builds a mask so utterly convincing and so deeply ingrained that the original face beneath is just lost.
Like they don't even know who they are anymore.
Exactly. The mask ceases to be a tool you can remove. It becomes the entirety of your identity.
The mask fuses to the bone, and, writers have known this long before we had fMRI machines to track dopamine.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the classic symbol of ancient theater, the masks of comedy and tragedy. They are never displayed independently.
Always together.
They're physically bound together because the ancient Greeks understood that comedy and tragedy occupy the exact same room in the human psyche. When you see a character generating immense laughter, you are almost always looking at a character carrying immense hidden grief.
The theatrical mask is the perfect analogy because it implies an audience.
Right.
And that transitions us from fictional characters to our own daily lives. How does this flawless mask actually manifest in regular, everyday friendships? This is where the story of Arya from the source material becomes incredibly grounding.
Yeah, let's talk about Arya. So she's described as the utility player of social comfort. She's the friend who never lets a silence sit too long. She has a witty deflection ready for every tense family dinner, every group project that's falling apart, every awkward first date.
The quintessential funny friend.
Exactly. People genuinely love being around her because she functions as a human shock absorber. She makes everyone else's hard days feel lighter.
But the narrative turns on a single piercing question from an acquaintance.
Yeah.
They ask her, when is the last time someone asked how you're doing, and you actually answered honestly?
And Arya's reaction is textbook. First, she laughs it off, the automatic defense reflex just kicking in. Then she pauses, and finally she realizes the devastating truth. Actually, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that.
Which forces us to confront a very uncomfortable question as readers. Were Arya's friends just exceptionally callous? Did they just lack basic empathy?
That was my immediate assumption. Like, I read that and thought, wow, she needs new friends immediately.
Right.
But the reality is much more complicated. It's not that her friends didn't care. It's that Arya was so skilled at her job as the funny one that she never gave them an opening.
Exactly. We're talking about individuals who have perfected the art of the preemptive strike. They can read the microexpressions in a room and diffuse tension before the concern can even fully form in their friend's mind.
I picture it like a conversational magician. You know how sleight of hand works, right?
Oh, yeah.
The magician makes a big, flashy, sudden movement with their right hand. That's the joke, the witty observation, the self-deprecating punchline. And because the audience is completely captivated by the laugh, no one ever looks at what's happening in the left hand.
The misdirection.
Yeah, and the left hand is where the exhaustion, the depression, and the desperate cry for help are being quietly hidden away. The friends aren't inherently bad people. They're just falling for a masterclass magic trick.
The magician controls the audience's gaze, just as the funny friend controls the emotional depth of the relationship.
That is so true.
Recognizing this requires a conscious, deliberate effort to look past the sleight of hand. If you have a friend who consistently redirects serious inquiries with a joke, or someone who is always eager to provide comfort, but physically recoils or deflects when comfort is offered to them.
The recoil is such a tell.
It really is. Those are the structural wires of the magic trick. That is the evidence of deceptive avoidance right there.
So we've looked at the psychological mechanics and we've looked at the storytelling and real-world applications. Now we have to address the so what.
The practical application.
Right. How do we find authentic selfhood amidst all this performance? And I love that we're pulling from philosophy here because psychology tells you what your brain is doing, but philosophy gives you a framework for how to live with it. Let's look at existentialism first.
Yes, existentialist thought, particularly concepts surrounding the absurd championed by thinkers like Camus, offers a radical reframing of suffering.
Walk us through it.
It posits that life has no inherent prepackaged meaning, and more importantly, that suffering is not a cosmic punishment. It is simply a byproduct of existing in a universe that remains entirely indifferent to our desires.
And what I find so empowering about this is how it reframes laughter. Under the existentialist lens, laughing in the face of suffering isn't weakness, it isn't denial, it is a profound act of rebellion.
Absolutely.
You are staring into the meaningless void, acknowledging the absurdity of your pain, and chuckling. It strips the trauma of its absolute authority over you.
It reclaims agency. You are saying, I am subject to this pain, but I dictate my response to it.
Yes.
However, we have to contrast this with Buddhist philosophy, which approaches the concept of suffering or dukkha from a fundamentally different angle. Buddhism asserts that suffering is the universal baseline of the human condition. It is completely unavoidable.
And crucially, Buddhism doesn't ask you to stop laughing, but it absolutely demands that you stop running.
Yes. The Buddhist practice of mindfulness, like Vipassana, requires you to sit in the presence of your pain without attempting to alter it, judge it, or mask it.
Which is so hard to do.
Incredibly hard. The deceptive avoidance strategy we've been discussing, using humor to constantly sidestep emotional reckoning, is directly antithetical to this. Buddhism warns that using a joke to permanently detour around your grief only ensures that the grief will wait for you down the road, usually compounding in interest.
Oof, compounding interest on grief.
You must eventually drop a performance and experience the reality of the wound.
Which flows perfectly into this Japanese concept of wabi-sabi. This is the aesthetic and philosophical appreciation of things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete.
It's a beautiful concept.
It really is. It's closely tied to kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold lacquer, highlighting the cracks rather than hiding them.
Wabi-sabi is the ultimate counterpoint to the societal pressure we discussed at the very beginning.
The mandate to perform flawless happiness.
Exactly. Society demands that you hide your cracks to remain valuable. Wabi-sabi argues the exact opposite.
It validates the imperfections.
It says that experiencing grief, trauma, or depression doesn't disqualify you from being a whole, functional person. The cracks don't reduce your value. They are the evidence of your survival.
A person who constantly performs fine isn't healthier than a person who admits they are struggling. They are just less honest.
That honesty requires immense emotional regulation, which brings us to Stoicism.
Okay, let me stop you there because I have a massive bone to pick with modern interpretations of Stoicism.
I had a feeling you might.
When I hear Stoic, I picture the guy who just grits his teeth, refuses to cry at a funeral, and aggressively suppresses every negative emotion until his blood pressure explodes. Isn't Stoicism just the ultimate academically sanctioned version of putting on the mask?
It is a pervasive and dangerous misunderstanding of the philosophy, honestly.
Okay, correct me.
True Stoicism, as articulated by Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus, is never about the suppression of emotion. It is about the absolute acceptance of reality and the mastery of your cognitive response to that reality. It hinges on the dichotomy of control,
Meaning?
clearly separating what is within your power from what is not.
So where does the funny mask fit into the dichotomy of control?
Humor, when wielded consciously, can be a profoundly Stoic tool. If you experience a tragedy, you cannot control the event. But if you can find the humor in the dark absurdity of the situation, you are actively choosing your perspective. You are building emotional resilience.
Ah, I see.
The critical difference lies in intent. Is your laughter a conscious choice made after acknowledging the pain? Or is it a compulsive reflex used to ensure you never have to look at the pain in the first place?
Wow.
Stoicism demands that you stare unblinkingly at the broken leg before you decide whether or not to laugh about how you tripped.
That distinction changes everything. It's the difference between laughing because you've made peace with the storm and laughing because you're terrified of the thunder.
Exactly.
It's demanding that we investigate our own motives. So how do we actually do this? For the listener right now who realizes their comedy has become a compulsive reflex, how do they transition back to authentic self-acceptance without completely destabilizing their life?
The transition must be incremental. You cannot violently rip off a psychological mask you've relied on for decades without causing severe psychological whiplash.
Right, that sounds dangerous.
Step one is simply establishing non-judgmental awareness. You have to notice the pattern without attacking yourself for it.
Self-compassion is the prerequisite for change. You have to look in the mirror and say, I am not broken because I used this mask. I was surviving.
Yes.
Things were heavy and my brain found a brilliant creative way to keep me alive and functional. You don't have to permanently delete your sense of humor. You just need to demote it from being the only tool in your emotional toolbox.
Once you've removed the shame associated with the mask, you move to step two. This is what we can call the one honest sentence rule.
I love this one.
It is a microdose of vulnerability. The next time a friend or colleague asks how you are doing, before your brain can initiate the conversational sleight of hand, you force yourself to deliver exactly one true sentence.
Like, honestly, today's been pretty heavy, but I'll be fine.
Notice the architecture of that sentence. You are not trauma dumping in the middle of a coffee shop.
Right.
You are not collapsing into tears. You are maintaining your composure, but you are intentionally short-circuiting the deceptive avoidance loop. You are admitting the reality of the weight.
It's taking the audio-canceling headphones off for just 3 seconds to acknowledge the noise and then putting them back on. It's manageable.
Very manageable.
And that builds the muscle memory for step 3, which is identifying your safe space. You have to find one trusted person,
Sure.
just one to whom you can show the unpolished, non-performing version of yourself.
And for the funny friend, this is terrifying. It goes against every conditioned instinct they have. They are terrified that if they stop entertaining, they will stop being loved.
But vulnerability isn't a personality trait you're born with. It's a skill you build through awkward repetition.
Yes.
You don't wake up one morning suddenly brave enough to drop the mask. You do it terribly the first time. Your voice shakes. You feel intensely embarrassed. But you survive it.
The world doesn't end.
Exactly. The world doesn't end. And so you do it again.
Think back to the characters we analyzed earlier. Gojo, Zenitsu, Usopp. Their narrative arcs don't involve them magically erasing their flaws or suddenly becoming fearless. Usopp remains terrified of danger.
He's shaking in his boots in almost every single arc.
Exactly. But their growth comes from standing right next to their insecurities and choosing to participate anyway. They stop hiding behind the performance and start integrating their fear into their authentic selves. They become brave while terrified.
Okay, so that is the roadmap for the individual wearing the mask. But what about the other side of the equation?
The frame.
Right. If you're listening to this and you suddenly realize you have an area or a Gojo in your friend group, someone who has been doing the conversational heavy lifting for years, how do you offer genuine support?
The most important thing to understand is that the chronically funny friend will almost never initiate a request for help.
They just won't.
The onus of connection rests entirely on you. You have to breach the perimeter. However, the method of your approach is critical.
Yeah.
You must avoid any form of forced positivity.
Toxic positivity is the enemy here. If you text them and say, hey, cheer up, you're always the life of the party, don't be sad, you are literally just reinforcing the terms of their employment.
Yes.
You are telling them, I only value you when you are performing the happy role.
You are validating the mask, not the person. Instead, you need to use language that bypasses the performance entirely. A simple, direct approach is best.
What's a good example?
Send a message like this. Hey, I don't say this enough, but you're always taking care of everyone else. I just want to make sure you're actually doing okay too.
I hope you're actually doing okay too. It is a surgical strike. It cuts right through the sleight of hand. It tells them, I see the magic trick. I see how hard you're working to keep everyone entertained, and I am giving you explicit permission to step off the stage. You don't have to be funny for me right now.
And the beauty of this intervention is that it facilitates mutual emotional healing.
How so?
It creates an environment where the complete spectrum of human emotion is validated. There's a wonderful metaphor in the source material that conceptualizes humor and sadness, not as diametric opposites, but as neighbors sharing the exact same house.
Oh, I love that. The problem is just that one of the neighbors learned how to answer the door really, really well, while the other was locked in the basement.
Exactly.
When you send that text, you're basically walking up to the house, knocking on the door, and demanding that the quiet neighbor finally gets a chance to speak. You are acknowledging the entire architecture of their humanity.
And by doing so, you alleviate the immense psychological burden of their performance. You allow them to rest.
Man, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring this directly back to you, the listener. If you recognized yourself in the psychological profiles today, if you saw your own coping mechanisms in Gojo's armor or Usopp's deflections, or if Arya's story hit a little too close to home, please remember what we established at the start.
You were never broken for needing a mask.
You were surviving a world that demands a smile at all costs. You were keeping yourself safe, but you don't have to carry that weight alone forever. And if you recognized a friend today, the one who never lets the group chat die, the one who always has the punchline, don't wait. Reach out to them.
Send that text.
Send the text. Or honestly, just share this deep dive with them. Let these words speak for you if you don't know how to break the ice.
And if we return to the ancient theater metaphor one last time, the masks of comedy and tragedy bound together, it leaves us with a profound paradigm shift to consider.
Yeah.
If comedy and tragedy truly are just two masks representing the exact same human experience, and if humor and sadness are simply neighbors sharing the same house,
then what does that mean for our healing?
it suggests that the ultimate goal of authentic selfhood isn't to violently rip off and destroy the comedy mask forever. Healing doesn't mean you have to stop being funny.
Thank goodness.
Right. Perhaps true. Authentic living is learning how to finally wear both masks at the exact same time. It is granting yourself the grace to laugh deeply at the utter absurdity of the world while simultaneously allowing yourself to cry at the crushing weight of it without ever letting one silence the other.